Today at Let's Take Charge, we have the story of an incredibly powerful woman because she chooses to wear her personality on her sleeve. She chooses to be the full version of herself. She's always showed up with kindness and positivity and also such fierce strength that it's such an interesting combination of these kinds of personalities that come together to form who she is. She's not just somebody that you would meet and not recall. She's somebody who leave a stamp in your memory forever. Lalitha Indrakanti has spent years in leadership as a woman who is so exuberant in her presence that she brings in a lot of solid grounding. And when I say grounding, I mean when you feel really rooted in knowing that you're in the right space with the right people. Of course, there are many, many titles. She's currently the CEO of Jaguar Land Rover and she's investing a lot of time, efforts and energy in the automotive space in our country. And to really see her go through all of the many hats that she's worn, the different career paths that she's chosen, the incredible mother that she is, the kind of life story she can tell, she is somebody who's here to tell us about what her journey looked like. And this journey has never had a destination. It's just been something that she's flowed with. It's an honor and pleasure to have her here with us today. We're going to talk about Let's Take Charge, and here on our hot seat is Lalitha Indrakanti. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's my pleasure to be here. And I think nobody would have done an introduction better than you did, Shreya.
Thank you, Lalitha. It's been many, many years of us interacting in many, many spaces. And like I said, one of the things that's really inspired me is how you have just flowed with where your career took you, where your journey took you. And with each hat that you've worn, I think there's so much that you've brought to the table that sometimes I think you must be surprised if you even knew that you could do what you're doing.
So I think I always say a job is what you make it out to be. Right? So wearing many hats and making the best out of it, it doesn't matter, life gives you opportunities, but it is all about what do you make of these opportunities, isn't it?
Absolutely. In terms of the role that you're in right now and the kind of space that it is, I'm sure you have some really interesting stories to tell.
Automotive is considered as man's world, right? I think, but of course I'm on the GCC part of it, which is mostly to do with technology. My team creates this incredible cars and I'm very proud about that and everything what we do for that. But yeah, definitely I'm in a man's world.
Yeah. That must again lead to a lot of seeing you hold that baton must be such an inspiring thing for women and people on your team to watch and to see and to imbibe.
As I say, if you can't see it, you can't be it. We all need role models in real life who looks like us, which gives us an inspiration to get to the place where we believe that we can be that, right? And if I can inspire people in, in that kind of a role, it's always, more than anything else, I consider it as a massive responsibility because you are living your life. It's for yourself, but at the same time, you also have the responsibility of people looking up to you.
Yeah. But tell us what brought you here. Why is Lalitha the Lalitha she is today?
I think it's shared grit and determination. Life gives you a lot of chances to give up. So it's about how do you just stay at it, be there, and keep fighting, right? It's never an easy task. So just be at it, have the determination to just keep going more than anything else, and it will take you somewhere. So it's what got me here. Yeah, I think it's been a long, almost 3 decades of career. And I've started when I was 17. And working at that point of time was it's not really a luxury, but it's a necessity, right? I wanted to do anything that put food at the table. Yeah. So from there, the way how I describe my career, Shreya, is the first 8 years of my career is I call as the no eyes phase, right? Where
Yeah.
you really don't know what you're good at, but you want to do anything that, you know, fulfills your basic necessities in life. So my first 8 years of phase, I've done many odd jobs. But after that, you slowly start realizing what your strengths are. And you want to do things that would use your strengths. So that is the phase where you are looking for opportunities, where you can grow, where you can add value both to yourself and for what you do. That's the second kind of phase. I think that phase of my career is probably my SAP journey, and I worked with IBM for a decade. That's kind of phase. But I think now this part of my career, I call it as the chosen phase, where you can afford to choose what you want to do, and more importantly, you can afford to choose what you don't want to do, right? I think that is really important. So now I have the ability, after growing up in my corporate ladder, where I pick and choose the roles where it's no longer about what you're good at, but it is about what kind of impact can you make. It's about the transformational impact that you can create on organizations and on people who are around you. So I'm glad and thankful that I'm at the phase of the career that I am in.
And, having to have started early, I genuinely believe while it's difficult when you're an early starter, puts you in some form in a space of becoming more mature quickly, of learning the ways of working around what this world looks like. I was an early starter too. I started when I was 20. And odd jobs was, everything from being an anchor on a stage to writing somebody's content. But what I learned very quickly was that hustle, when you do that early on, it really gives you, in some form, that path.
It's a massive advantage, I tell you, because life can teach you lessons that is really not taught in any of the premium B schools. It's about, there's nothing like learning something on your own, and it's not a bookish knowledge anymore. Yeah. You're facing these situations, you have to overcome these situations to stay where you are. So I would say starting early is a massive advantage, because and those are your growing years as well, right? So you're learning with a real-time experiences. Really nothing else compares to the kind of the experience you gain by doing that.
I agree. And when you think of that, when you're 17, when you're 18, and then you're in this, and the necessity also teaches you resilience. And that, I think, is a tenor and a quality that you don't get very often, and that clearly shows up when life has lifed you.
Yes. Resilience is, I think, such an important leadership quality, right? It's because life is all about ups and downs. Life is never a straight graph. You're always going to have challenges. You can't avoid these challenges, and nothing can prepare you for these challenges. It's about when you're hit with a challenge, what kind of attitude do you take towards that? What kind of, how do you tide through that? I keep telling people it's not about falling, but it's about how do you get up, dust yourself, and run again, right? It is about, that is what resilience is all about. It is about what do you learn out of it? How do you deal with it? You can either sit there and crib and continue to, those negative emotions really doesn't help you, isn't it? So it's about what kind of lens do you wear, and how do you look at the positivity? How do you look at the opportunities that the situations has given you? What do you learn out of it? And it's not about not making mistakes, but it's not about not making the same mistakes again and again.
I remember my grandfather's favorite quote used to be, "A wise man learns from others' mistakes, a fool from his own." And it often would be directed at me because I'd keep falling and I'd keep hurting myself all the time, fractures and all of that. But I think now when I look back, it's such a profound thing.
It is.
And also, what you spoke about reminds me of one of my favorite questions, which is I see people who have dealt with failure a lot more in their lives to be able to do that dust off, pick up, and move quickly. So, I want to ask you about some of those points in time because we don't talk enough about it. You know, when people look at us, they see successful women, you know, sitting across each other, telling the stories of how they got here. But we often don't focus on the stories of failure. But those are the ones that help us do that. Get up, dust off. Okay, next thing. So tell us a little bit about your experience with failure.
You know, honestly speaking, because of my insane amount of positivity, right? I'm not sure if I consider anything as a failure, right? And it is a very hard question for me to honestly answer, Shreya, because people want you to have that one or two things where you failed miserably. But I always look at it, how did that change my life? What did it give me? How did I get on to the next thing? So it's really hard for me to recollect what is the things which, yeah, of course, are there things that you sit and cry about? Of course, yes. There are always things that you sit and cry about, but it is about what did you do after that? I only remember what I did after that than the times when I sat and cried about it, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think of you as that, you know, as the woman who'd roll up her sleeves, deal with the crisis at hand, finish, and then sit down and say, okay, what next?
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah. So when I think of it resonates so deeply, by the way, I also believe that we wouldn't be here if we hadn't had those experiences.
Isn't it?
And we wouldn't have been taught those lessons if we didn't go through what we went through. So when I think of your approach to failure, I think that's such a powerful life lesson. When you stop looking at things as failure and you're just saying, okay, this is the next curve in the road, I'm just going to ride it and go into the next one.
I think I'll give you an example of what it is, right? When I was like hardly, you know, I studied very young, and I think by the time I finished my 10th grade, I was hardly probably 13-year-old, right? My aunt actually stopped my education, okay? So for a year, I just sat at home and did nothing because she expected a transfer, didn't happen. She didn't want to continue in the village, you know, long story short. When I got back to the city and she said, so what do you want to do now? I said, I'll figure it out. I went to a tutorial college, enrolled myself, did 2 years of PU in 4 months. And it's, you know, instead of choosing sciences, I chose, you know, different subjects, because at that point of time, what was important for me is what is that will take me through to the next bit. It's about, yes, you have a situation in hand and you can sit and crib about it, or you just look at how do I get through that 12th grade or the PUC. So with 4 months of preparation, I gave probably 2 years, 8 papers in one go, and I cleared it. Percentage doesn't matter now, right? I passed, that's what matters. And I moved on into the next phase of life. So as I rightly said earlier, it's about how do you deal with it and what comes next after failure. Because after failure, it can't keep having failures after failures, right? It's when there is down, there's always an up. So focus on the ups.
Yeah, I mean, oh, I have goosebumps as you say that, because we often spend, especially in the world that we're in today, and as I see the younger generation sort of stepping into workplaces, their first heartbreak almost kills them.
Yeah.
You know, their first failure almost destroys them. And I keep saying, you have a long way to go. This is something you should look back and laugh and say, oh, this happened to me back then. But if you lose your strength in the first one,
you have to conserve all your energy, right? But I think it is today's generation is also a little bit of an entitled generation, right? And I think maybe because of people like us, maybe if I look at myself as a parent, you give so much so early in life to the next generation, because you don't want them to, because you know what hardship is.
Yeah.
You don't want them to go through the same heartbreaks. So yeah, the resilience will be a little more lower,
Yeah.
good or bad. But I'm sure they will have their own share. It is, every time I tell my son, at your age, and he'll say, please stop it. Stop it. Your situation is different and my situation is different. I didn't have to go and work, I had to do that. And he says, but I don't have to. So I will never understand when you keep going back to, I'm sure your parents would have told you, oh, we used to study under the street like stories, right? And we don't get it. Similarly, what we went through, the next generation won't get it.
Yeah.
I think they will have to go through their own journey,
Yeah.
their own process of dealing with failures in their own way. We can't teach this, right?
Yeah.
Life will teach them.
Life will teach them, for sure. Like you said, it is the lessons that will eventually make you the person that you become.
Exactly.
So this brings me to a game. This is something new. Okay, so I'm going to ask you 5 questions, all with H for start. Okay. So, what is your best memory of home?
My current home. I didn't have a home growing up. Okay, so Bangalore is truly home. This is where I feel belong. This is where I feel grounded, because my first 20 years, every 2 years I moved. Maybe 3 years in 1 or 2 instances. But until I came to Bangalore, I truly didn't have a home. So now my home, now when I say home, it is my morning first cup of coffee in my garden with my dog and cat and sunrise. Yeah. That's what comes to mind.
That's such a profoundly beautiful image that you create. And to have done that for yourself, I think I applaud your strength, and I applaud, this journey that I've been grateful to witness. The next thing is a heartbreak that you still hold on to.
Heartbreak. So it's about the things that I couldn't do, right? I think at a young age, I wanted to pursue dance, and I couldn't do it for whatsoever reasons. Life takes you different directions. Now I believe I have 2 left feet, and I still believe that's something which I still, wish I had it. I wish I continued on that journey. So, when I think about it's only about the things you couldn't do, rather than people who hurt you, right? It's about move on from those, right? Because as long as you remember things you couldn't do, maybe you would still do it at some point of time in life.
Okay, so who is a hero that you'd like to share about today?
Who's the hero? My aunt. Okay. So her story is that of a young woman who had to take the family burden at the young age of 22 because family situations have suddenly changed. The 2 elder members, her elder brother died, her father had a paralysis stroke, and she had 2 younger brothers to take care of. It's still, for me, she's hugely inspiring, because leadership can't be taught in management books. It is what you see and learn. I have grown up seeing her solve problems, fight for equality. The huge inspiration for me is when I look back through the old photo albums at home. 19 early 40s or that kind of time frame. She was a gold medalist. Okay, and when I look at her college photograph, there's this bunch of probably 25 men and 3 girls sitting at the footsteps of the teachers, right? Education, for example, is something we take today for granted for our younger generation, for girls. And I'm sure in her times it was not easy, right?
Yeah.
Unless they broke the norms and they paved the way. So what today we feel is not normal, if it has to become normal for the next generation, we just have to be at it. So she started working young. She raised her two younger brothers. She never got married. And for good or bad, she had to take care of me in her late 40s, right? And but the way how she dealt with it, the way she created an impact for people around her is something which is truly inspirational for me even today.
She sounds like she has embedded parts of her in you.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
The next one that I have is, what's a highlight or a flex that you're proud of?
Where I am today, right? It's about, you know, it's unimaginable for a girl who's vernacular educated, coming from a village, haven't really seen anything that cuts out for success. I'm hugely proud about where I am today. Yeah.
And the last one is, what is a hope that you have that you keep alive, burning?
Hope is, I just hope the next generation is going to have it a little more easy than we did, as women especially.
Yeah.
It's, yeah, what can we do today to make it better for them?
Yeah, I'm going to ask you in connection to that, what do you think people like us, mid-management women, what do you think we can do to make sure that we're, one, paying it forward, two, creating more, spaces where women can just be themselves and not be judged like we were just talking about it, right? From skin color to body size.
Absolutely. What can we do? I think there's a lot we can do, right? It is about, you've been seeing the whole news in the last few days and how horrific it is. But also it's always, we teach our daughters a lot of things, but how much are we teaching our sons? It's about, I keep telling my management team, it's not the women who need to be taught, it's the men who need to be taught in how to be inclusive. It's about changing that mentality, and it's a lot of education, Shreya. It's about, because it is generations of DNA coding, right? And it's not going to change overnight, and things that are something as fundamentally taken for granted about what a woman would want to do. It's fundamentally as simple as, did you ask, right? It's about, don't make assumptions. It's about, for my male colleagues, I keep telling them about, did you ask, right? It's fundamentally as simple as that. Did you assume or did you ask, right? It's about, so that's one part of it. And the second part of it is about, how do you teach the women to be a little bit more confident about themselves? So the whole thing about mentorship, the whole thing about creating a space where they can speak and ask, and more importantly, know that they're not alone in this journey. There are so many people out there, so many people have the same fears as them. And how do you bring that collective answers to those questions?
Yeah, you spoke about mentorship, and I want to dwell on allyship, right? So I'm going to ask you about some of the mentors and allies that you've had that you feel championed by, because those stories don't often get told. So would love to hear some of those.
Okay. I think I've been blessed to have good mentors in life. You don't realize how important it is. There are two things often I talk about, is one is sponsorship and the other one is mentorship, right? It's about not to get confused between these two. My mentorship journey is, there's been a situation at work where I felt a strong need that I need to go to somebody and, learn how to navigate the situation. So I myself went and chose a mentor and went to her, and now when I speak to her and she says, oh my God, I didn't know I was so bad to you. So I think the job of a mentor is to make you aware of your shortcomings. It's about not telling you how great you are. Yes, positive reinforcement is important, but also it is about making you painfully aware of your blind spots, right? And oh boy, I think I used to come back every session crying, right? Because I used to feel so miserable about it. But when I look back now, I'm so thankful to her and for those experiences, because if I wouldn't have known, I wouldn't have been able to correct it, right? It's about, so I've truly been blessed to have mentors, and good sponsors are the ones who speak on your behalf, who will get you the spotlight, who will take your agenda forward. So that's a completely different, we need both in our life.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you're right. And I feel very strongly at this point to speak about, I resonate with you when it comes to positivity. And I believe that when you genuinely approach something with honesty, there's so much power in the kind of people that you attract into your world.
On the mentorship, there's only one point which I want to talk about is reverse mentorship. Okay? Because I think as you grow in your career, while of course you spend a lot of time mentoring other people, men or women, it doesn't matter, but also it is important that you learn from the next generation. Okay, I think I get quite a bit of reverse mentored by my daughter now, right? It's about understanding their perspective, be it at workplace, be it your younger colleagues, listening to them, learning from their experiences, because they see world differently.
Yeah.
So at the start of your career, as much as it is important to be mentored by seniors, as you are growing up in your career, it is important to be mentored by people who are the next generation.
You spoke about something very profound when you spoke about how being or becoming self-aware and somebody sort of championing you to push yourself towards self-awareness, which is, by the way, an attribute of kindness, not of niceness. When you're pushed to do that and the importance of that, if you talk a little about that.
I think there are two things which I will talk about, right? One is an incident, or I think as women, we are often told you're very emotional, okay? I used to be, in my mid part of my career, I used to be so guilty about my emotions. I used to be really, really sorry about being either happy or upset or whatever kind of thing. So one of my mentors made me do an exercise, right? So what he did is he just made me record how I behaved in certain situations when I felt that I'm emotional and guilty. And after a period of time, he wanted me to go back and look at what I did. Would I have done anything different, right? We did this exercise for almost, I think, about 6 months. At the end of 6 months, again, the self-realization hit me that I wouldn't change a thing. I may be emotional, that is my strength, because unless I feel that passion, because passion is an emotion, isn't it? So unless you feel passionate about it, it doesn't bring out my best. I can't be lukewarm for situations. I can't not feel happy when I have wins. I can't not feel sad when I have failures. That's who I am, right? The biggest change that happened in me with that self-realization is that it took away the guilt part out of me, of this is who I am and I'm okay being who I am, right? I think that is the biggest lesson of self-realization for me. And the second part of my self-realization is, you knew who, most of the people know who you are, right? But you don't know why you are. I think as I've grown in my career, a lot of leadership coaches, a lot of personality testing, all this happened, and one of my coach reasoned it out so well in terms of things like, for example, I don't have conformance to authority. I just don't realize that there are things that you need to be, just because I told you so, I cannot do anything just because somebody told me so, right? And she beautifully related it back to my childhood, because we are who we grew up to be, right? Because I never had an authority in my life, and I'm forced to make decisions for myself. I'm forced to reason it out, logic it out, and so I don't have that parent figure in my life where just because we told you, you just have to do something. I didn't grow up in that kind of environment. So when you come to your workplace, in your corporate careers, you can't just listen to your bosses just because they told you so. So when you come into your workplace, I'm not used to doing things just because somebody told me so. I need the reason, I need the logic, and I need to see a point in doing it. Of course, they might see the big picture, but they'll have to make me understand, unless I can't bring out the best. So it is about that whole self-awareness part, what we're talking about.
Yeah, and you spoke about guilt there, and I want to sort of steer you towards that conversation. There's so much both shame and guilt that women carry. Shame because everything about you, from the way you look to the way you behave, yes, to the way you sound, everything is judged. The entire world, including brands, are trying to make you feel insecure because they have a means to an end, it is.
Exactly.
And then there's so much guilt because that so much of it is not yours. It's heaped on you, and you're almost guilted for not being guilty also.
Totally, absolutely.
So,
it's one of my most favorite topic of, for any women to be successful. I strongly believe guilt management is one of the most powerful tool for the women to be successful, because, at the end, that is a lot to do. It comes a lot with your work-life balance part of it. As I say, for me, it's all about work-life integration. Okay, it's about choosing who you want to be for that particular day, for that particular moment, and more importantly, not feeling guilty about what you're not able to be. It's for me, life is all about guilt management. It's about how do you prioritize things in a way that makes you feel less guilty, because we are so prone to guilt trips all our life, and women especially. I don't think any man would even understand how guilty you feel for either doing something or for not doing something, right? It's so inherent in our personalities for every woman, right? So the way to manage for me, Shreya, is about prioritization, brutal prioritization, right? It's brutal prioritization of what would make you feel less guilty. Do you choose to be, a very serious career-focused woman for that day, or you just chose to be whatever role you play in your life? It could be mother, it could be sister, daughter, or a friend, it doesn't matter. But what do you prioritize, and how does it make you feel? Because as long as you focus on your emotions, if you can't do that, you will not bring out the best in you, and that will not help anybody around you, right? Because the guilt eats you up, right?
Yeah.
It's about, so how do you manage that? How do you do things that makes you feel less guilty? And the whole process of reasoning it out brings that self-awareness, what we were talking earlier about, the clarity of thought that ease your life and the life of people around you.
I so second that in terms of clarity, because when you know, it's unshakable. Somebody can't cast a shadow of doubt in you if you just know, because it's in your body. Because you're like, no, this feels right. And when you're in that mode, you will navigate it anyway.
And as you said earlier, right, no matter what you do, you're going to be judged anyway. So at least might as well do things that makes you feel less guilty and happy, right? You don't want to be judged for doing things that you don't want to do.
Exactly.
Right? So
wow.
It's about...
That is so profound. Hold on, it's taking me a moment. you'd rather be judged for things you want to do than be judged for things you don't want to do.
Absolutely.
So do what you want to do.
Exactly.
So do what you want to do.
Because anyway, you're going to be judged. We all know about it by now.
My good Lord. Okay. Now that brings me to, you spoke about work-life integration, and that's one of my favorite topics because I personally don't see them as separate things. I see my work
as integration. As I said, there's no balance. Balance is a myth.
Yeah, I agree. In terms of when I look at careers, there are times when you have, your job is as much a part of your life as it is.
It is.
So when we keep making this work and life dichotomy, I think it's detrimental because you're saying they're two separate entities. When you bring them together, then you have the...
Absolutely. So for me, there is absolutely no line, right? When I'm on a vacation, if I need to take a work call, I feel zero guilt about it because the balance works both ways, right? It's not always about one way. At the same time, on a busy work day, if there is something which is priority for me to be with my kids, to go to a parent-teacher meeting, I don't mind dropping everything and going. And I feel zero guilt about it, right? I think it's about how do you bring those, as I said, it all boils down to be what role do you want to play in your life for that particular moment? What needs you more?
Wow.
Yeah.
I used to call it the switch. I think it's a switch.
It is.
It's like, okay, I'm pressing this switch, this color, this mode, this archetype, this is what I'm going to access. But I love that because I think not a lot of us realize that it's a spectrum.
It is. It is. It's,
you know, we often think it's this or this, but it's never that. It's an entire rainbow.
There is so much of an overlap
Yeah.
in all of the things that you do. It is hard to draw a line.
Yeah, yeah. Now I'm going to shift gears a little bit and ask you about, you've had such an interesting mix of industries that you've worked in. And very often, I love that too because that's who I've been in my career as well. But it's often looked at as, oh, you worked here also, you worked here also. There seems to be that thing. What people don't realize is what a powerful thing it is to have. So if you can share a little bit about this range, because we're talking about spectrums, of spaces that you've been in, of roles you've navigated.
I think it's all about what excited me and what made me happy at that point of time. And honestly speaking, yeah, there are people who choose a certain career or a certain industry and be at it and become masters. There's nothing wrong with it, but it's all about how do you develop that situational competence, right? Because you can't sit and wait and master everything. You need to get into it, keep learning along the way. And what kind of percentage you need to get into it, it will depend on you. Whether there are people who, especially women, even if they have 100%, they don't feel confident, right? But it's about what is that your personal percentage. Anytime you switch gears, switch industries, switch roles, switch jobs, it's about what is the percentage that makes you feel comfortable about, because you don't want to not know anything and start, right? So what percentage do you want to learn? Is it 70-30, 60-40? It doesn't matter. It's a very personal range, I would say. So it's about what is important is, especially if you are somebody like me who continue to switch industries, switch jobs kind of a thing, it's about building that confidence as you go along, because continuous learning, and I think probably that's the reason I love learning. I love, something, if you give me the same thing every day, I'm going to get bored very easily. So it's about my quest for that learning is what made me switch industries or jobs, and how do you keep going at it and build your mastery as part of the job that you do.
Yeah, and you spoke about an interesting statistic, how women hold themselves accountable to higher standards. I recently read this, that high-achieving women, 76% of them get very tough feedback, whereas high-achieving men, only 2% get tough feedback.
Totally believe that. Totally believe that, because if you are a achieved leader, or if you are a senior woman, that means you've been, you know what I want to say, right? We can't say these things on the camera.
No, you can't. We've been put under the linga for no reason other than our gender when it comes to leadership, when it comes to feedback, and it's about to change.
Exactly. That's because ambition for a man is given. It's a part of their natural trait. Ambition for women is considered a bad thing, right? If you're ambitious women, you are not good.
Yeah.
So totally true.
Yeah. So with that, I'll come to, you have been such a champion of diversity and inclusion over the years. Years when it was not even being spoken about.
Yeah.
You know, years when DEI was not coined as a term. And I have had the privilege of meeting you even back in those days when we were talking about the nuances of it, but we didn't have a language for it. Tell us a little bit about that journey. What inspired to do the work you do? Why do you do what you do even now with so much gusto?
Yeah, I think again I go back to, if you can't see it, you can't be it. Show them, right? If you want to make a change, you can continue to talk about it, or you can roll your sleeves and show them how to do it. I'm honestly very happy that we are talking about whole DEI stuff as much as we are doing now, because it was not spoken in the earlier things, right? It is, people couldn't bring their authentic self to work. It could be, when I'm talking about diversity, I'm not talking just about gender here. It's about everything. It's generational diversity, it's your sexual preferences, it's your mental abilities, whatever it is. Diversity has, for me, it's a very broad spectrum. So I'm happy that it's no longer an optional thing to do for organizations. Okay, I'm absolutely not apologetic about organizations having diversity targets. I'm not apologetic about creating preferential policies. I'm not apologetic about, for example, giving higher referral bonuses for bringing women into the workforce, because if you want to, get the diversity at the table, you have to work hard for it. And if you need to make some positive reinforcement for it, so be it, right? We all talk about equality, but it is not equal. It's for you to make it equal, you need to make those differential policies, you need to make it more easier, you need to make it attractive for women to be at work, or for any diversity person to be at work.
Here, because I can't tell you how important it is for us to talk about the difference between equality, equity, social justice,
yes,
and the journey from social justice towards equality, because that seems to be so misconstrued. My blood boils because even now people say diversity higher. Like, you're seeing the global landscape of how it's playing out, how it's become a dirty word.
It is.
But look at that woman that they're talking about.
It's, I have grown up in my career wearing, people told me at my face, we need to wear a dress to work to get promoted, right? Every time I'm promoted, it's always written off, you're promoted because you're a woman, right? We've all grown in that, we've all grown up in that kind of work environment. It's not majorly different even now. It's not. It's, a lot of managers do it because it's a tick box. A lot of managers do it because it is a target, right? But so be it, right? So be it, because unless you continue to be at it, you will not be able to increase the diverse workforce. Unless you can increase the diverse workforce, it's not going to become the new normal, right? So it's okay. Let people say whatever they want to say. Hurtful comments you keep hearing, and women hate it more than men.
Oh, yeah.
To hear that there are diversity higher, there's a diversity percentage. I know a lot of senior women leaders who wants to behave that it doesn't exist. And I don't want to do anything related to diversity. Yeah, there are.
We know
there
them.
are because they're again ashamed.
Yeah.
Right? They're ashamed of the gender. They're ashamed of, they want to be treated equal. but you cannot be treated equal unless you roll up your sleeves and do it yourself, right?
Yeah, and that's what skin in the game looks like.
Yes.
Because very often women resource in the power of patriarchy, because that's what upholds the current world in the
Yes.
form and manner it does. But this is what feminine authority looks like, you know. When I see leaders like you doing the work that you do, and so seamlessly doing all of it, right? It's happening because it's parallelly running. It's not a thought that needs to be extracted from somewhere, put into your head, cooked into something. It just is because of your experiences and because of what you drive. So it just gives me so much joy to watch women like you doing what you do.
Thank you so much.
And
Let's show it.
I know. Yeah. And for upholding the values that you do, because that is so powerful. And it just gives me hope and inspiration every day to watch what you do so seamlessly.
Thank you.
We spoke about all these colors of the spectrum of various aspects of your journey, and I'd like to know from you what you define as success for yourself and what you see over the years as your success today.
I think the definition of success keeps changing, right? It keeps changing as you grow up in your career, because you know, your earlier part of your career, you are very guided by what the world thinks of you, and the success is a lot more materialistic at that point of time in terms of what is successful: get a job, get a house, get married, have kids. You know, these are all the measures of success. I still remember when I was in my late 20s, there was one day and I decided, I think I should get married. You know why? Because people all the time told me, oh, you work hard because you don't have any responsibilities. And at that point of time, the only thought in my head is, I want to, you know, have a life, have a family, and still work as hard so that you can't say this about me, right? It's about, see, your definition of success changes, and you know, as you grow up and as you be a lot more comfortable with being who you are, I think success definition changes. For me now, it is all about, I've been definitely blessed to have the organizations that I've started from scratch, but when I now look back at it, it really doesn't, you know, the organization I had set up and grown from scratch. Now when I think about it, I don't remember what kind of increments I've got or what kind of promotions I've got. It's about the people, even after so many years, come back and talk about the culture that I had set up. It's about people who remember you way after you left, about telling you what kind of a good time it was. And so that means you're creating some kind of impact. So for me, now it is all about the people whose life I touch, the kind of transformational impact that I create in an organization. If it is going in a certain direction, can you turn the direction to make it better? So that is what success looks like. It's definitely no longer about the worldly way how the world looks at it now.
Again, a reminder of why this is feminine authority, and I think it's just so beautiful to have an approach to leadership that is about transformation, that is about lives you touch. It reminded me of that quote, people not remember what you say, but they'll always remember how you made them feel.
Yes,
and,
so true.
Lalitha, you're a testament to that. I think people will always remember you. From every single panel I can think of that we've been part of together, every single time I've met you, there is a certain imprint that you leave behind, and I'm so grateful for it, and I'm so grateful for you.
Thank you so much for having me today.
What a conversation. I mean, Let's Take Charge also looks like this. It looks like flow. It looks like being who you are, celebrating yourself, being positive, being
less guilty.
Being less guilty, absolutely. So yeah, if you're listening to this and you've gotten this far, then Lalitha is also going to be speaking at the Grace Hopper Celebration India. That's happening in November. So make sure you catch us live and in person. There are lots more details coming about the event, so stay tuned to that. But otherwise, for those of you who just enjoyed yourselves just like I did, make sure to like, share and subscribe, because there are many more such conversations from incredible people such as Lalitha coming your way. Thank you for listening, and keep it locked for many more such stories. Let's take charge.